What's up, guys? Ian here, coach of your Ladner Lanturn, bringing you guys our UPA-D League Season 4 recap. So I'm going to cover everything from the season, including my draft breakdown. We'll talk about how I felt about the team, post-draft and whatnot. I'll go through the doc and walk you guys through everything there. We'll go through each team one by one, and then we will talk about my statistics and sort of how I felt about the Mons after using them at the end of the season. So, if you guys have watched my UPA-D run, then you'll know that it was bumpy, to say the least. But let's start off with the draft breakdown here. So, I ended up getting a pretty shit spot, and then I was going to take Zero Aura and Tornadus because I felt like they covered each other really well. But Zero Aura got taken on the back wheel, so I ended up going for Tornadus Scizor, which was a really early round 2 pick. But I kind of decided after I picked Torn, let me just pick Rain. I haven't taken Rain in a while, and I'll just take like budget Rain to an extent, which I ended up doing like really slowly, right? So I got the Torn, I got the Scizor, and they worked well together with the Rain. And then I picked up Hydreigon because I wanted a really, really, really good Dragon for the team, as well as a actual fire resist for the Scizor. And another theme of the team was just going to kind of be Volturn to get into big threats. So I had 3 U-turners right off the bat, which was super duper helpful. Amoonguss was something that sort of plugged a hole in the team. It's not something I could bring every single week, which I was a little bit disappointed in. I probably should have picked something I was going to rely on a little bit more, but I decided to go with like the Wolfie Glick Torn plus Amoonguss combo, which was actually really effective. Surprisingly, as a regen core, it works a lot better than I thought it might have in practice. Conk was on the board, so I grabbed it. Like this was so long ago that I don't remember why I took something like Conk here. Could have just been that I needed a physically offensive Pokemon at this range. I grabbed more priority, which was good. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why I grabbed that, but Necrozma was definitely one of the stars of the team, and it really filled a hole that Amoonguss couldn't, because primarily it was a rocker, and I didn't have any other rockers. That was one of the large weaknesses of the team, is that it was very hazard. Like, the depth of hazards was not very good. It was pretty much just Necrozma most of the season, right? And so that kind of sucked in the end, but that's what happens. Necro was top tier in the draft for me. Gardevoir, grabbing Gardevoir was a little bit sus. It was kind of just the best fairy that was left, and that's what I wanted to grab it for, as well as like a decent Scarf option. And then I grabbed Heliolisk, and I started rounding out the Rain options here on the team. With the Rain-based Electric type, I grabbed the Pelipper to set up Rain, which was just a huge mistake. I shouldn't have even gone Rain. Or if I had gone Rain, I should have gone with a different Mega pick. So I definitely regret what I had done with the draft now. I guess I'll talk about that in a sec. I grabbed Monferno. It was good for 1 point. It came to 2 games. It got 2 kills. That's definitely worthwhile for the 1 point that I got it for. It set up rocks in one of the games. So it held the value that I wanted it to have as a 1 point Mon. That's pretty much all it needed to do. The fact that it was a fire type didn't really matter because I was running a rain team anyways, but steel types did end up being a little bit problematic without Conk around mostly. Pardon me. And then I grabbed the Mega Swampert, which obviously worked with the rain pretty well. I definitely regret not grabbing a better Mega earlier on and just not going with the rain idea at all. I think that having the speed control option was nice, and it definitely caused a lot of over prep on people's parts. And Mega Swampert did very well this season, do not get me wrong. It was very effective at what it did this season, but Pelipper was just such a waste of a Pokemon. Like, it was only there as an enabler for the Swampert, so it really felt like it was just 6v5 every single game because of how useless this stupid bird is. And I should have gone a different route, taken a more aggressive Mega, and focused more on bulk with the rest of the team instead of what I did. Because I sort of pigeonholed Necrozma into more of a defensive role, which is something I've tried to avoid with Mew in the past. And there was something like Victini on the board while we were drafting still, so definitely would have had options in terms of what I could have grabbed. I think Victini and Jirachi were both there, so I could have gone a completely different route, but I ended up deciding to go with this one, which may or may not have been a mistake. I made Torn and Hydra my Z users. Both of them rocked Z crystals this season, I think at least twice each, so do not regret that by any means. There weren't really any other good Z choices, and Torn pretty much had to be a Z user. I was getting a little flack on the Hydra Z pick, but like, what else was I even going to use as a Z Pokemon in that slot? Like Heliolisk? Heliolisk didn't need it at all, and Hydra used it very effectively. Sorry, very much besides the point. Let's move on to the dock here. So this is what my team looked like, and what the dock looks like. We obviously finished 5 and 5 plus 5, which was not technically accurate. It was 6 and 5 plus 8 in the end because of the play-in match that we had to play. Let me just get Ishan off of there. Because, yeah, I don't have to play Ishan anymore. Yeah, that's pretty much what it looked like. You know, we had this stretch where we would lose odd weeks and win even weeks, and it ended up just being better as the season progressed. I do feel like we played better after week 5, like post week 5. I felt like I was playing better even in my losses, which was just something I had to contend with. We would not have made playoffs without our week 10 win, which was basically a complete fluke because Sean essentially just threw me playoffs on a platter, or could have thrown me playoffs on a platter if Ishan didn't tie me. So that's just sort of how that one worked out. So that was my team page. There's a bunch of other team pages on here. I locked mine so that other coaches couldn't just like edit it and change my nicknames and stuff on here, change the stats that I had or anything like that. And I didn't appreciate that, so locked that. I didn't make any transactions or anything, but this is how playoffs worked out. We ended up finishing 3rd in our division, which was quite sad because I ended up beating every single other person in my division. Sean obviously by a fluke, but we beat Scrappy and we beat DS. We were DS's only loss all season, and him finishing 1st, we ended up playing him in round 1 of playoffs, or at least we were supposed to, and then he forfeit to me, so it didn't really matter in the end, but it was pretty tight. There were a lot of 5 and 5 teams here. The Brooklyn Williams was Mustang, and he took over for Venoxio and the Gurdurians of the Galaxy, who we'll be talking about in just a second here. But barely missed out on playoffs after beating me week 1. Yeah, there's a couple things that I should probably discuss now. By no means do I hold any ill feelings to anybody in this league, by the way, but I just wanted to mention that like it really felt like the atmosphere was kind of laid back, like very laid back, which was a little bit strange to me for like all the competition level that there were. Like I really respected a lot of these coaches, but there were so many FFs, so many FFs, and like 2 FFs in playoffs was just. It's not even like the admin's fault at all. It's just people not caring, which I definitely lost respect for the people that didn't care, because it just felt like, you know, you can do better than that, you know. But that's just my perspective. I don't really know what to say besides that. There wasn't really anything else to talk about here. I haven't looked at the kill leaders page, but we did have one tied for 3rd. Okay, so that's kind of cool. I didn't even notice that. Didn't really know that. And then we actually had a 4th place tie as well, which is kind of fun. Oh, and 2 things tied for 3rd, actually. Wow. I actually had never looked at this page before, so today I saw, I guess. Where's Monferno? Tied for 10th. Unlucky. Anyways, moving on. Let's start talking about the weeks in order. So, first week we took on Veno, and sort of go through the prep doc first, actually. So, if you've never seen one of my prep docs, this is what it looks like. I have my team over here, obviously. The max speeds is like unboosting versus boosting, so Adamant to Jolly in terms of the speed for Mega Swampert. I highlighted it in yellow if I'm expecting it to come, green if it did come, orange if I didn't think it was coming at all. I list the priority, the hazards, hazard removal 4 times weaknesses, what I'm speed creeping. Excuse me. the dates that we're playing and the date that the date range that we're playing and the date that I'm actually playing. So keeps me helps me keep things in order. I move my prep docs around my Chrome tabs um, in the order that I'll be playing them that week, and it helps me keep things in order and stay organized. So against Venno, I wasn't expecting the Weavile. Coco Lucha was really scary. The Salazzle ended up being the bane of my existence that game, and it just like ended up hitting all of the Fire Blasts. I played really poorly around Registeel, considering I was running a Z Fight Torn. I just like never clicked it, which was really dumb. Because getting rid of Registeel would have put my Amoonguss in a really good spot to sit there and wall the Slowbro. But also probably would have put my Conk in a weird spot. Conk was already in a weird spot that game. I got like crit or something and couldn't do anything, but I didn't really prep very well for the Salazzle at all. Like the one ground move I had was Stomping Tantrum on Amoonguss. Oh, and Earthquake. Sorry, I did have Earthquake on the Necrozma for probably Coco and Registeel. I made a big misplay in this game, and I clicked Trick with Gardevoir on a Protect from the Salazzle instead of just clicking Psyshock, which would have been a much better play. I could have forced the Salazzle out, and then I didn't have to basically kill my Gardevoir for no reason. And I ended up not putting Scissor in a position to win, because I did feel like Scissor had a really good chance of just like setting up and winning the game against a lot of this team. And if I could get to +6, then I was sitting relatively pretty. +6 with Rocks Up would have guaranteed me the win, I think. But I don't remember if I actually even could get Rocks Up that reliably, plus whatever was going on here. So perfectly fine, but that's how it broke down against Venno. Week 2, we took on DS in the Birmingham Vulpix, and I felt really, really confident in this matchup. I felt confident in a lot of the things that weren't going to come, and a lot of the things that were coming, and I ended up just steamrolling this game with Mega Swampert. It put in so much work. Basically, once I eliminated Quillfish, Mega Swampert was pretty much primed and ready to just like break the rest of the team. I brought a Z-Steel Hydra, which ended up killing off the floor just like it meant to. Scarf Scissor was really interesting in this game. It didn't need to come, but it did, and it worked out pretty well. I didn't really have the best Mega Aerodactyl checks, and I brought like a bunch of Aerodactyl weak Mons, but getting Torn as a lead, Pelipper did nothing but set rain, and then Necrozma was reasonably effective at just taking down the arrow, getting a Toxcough and getting Rocks Up, which was pretty important. He ended up bringing a lot of hazards, so I had to defog them away, but the damage was done against the arrow, and that's pretty much all that I needed to have happen. Against Ange, I rewatched this game doing the doing the stats, and I was very particular about my EV spread and whatnot, but she just had basically the opposite of Rain, right, which is Trick Room. So I opted not even to bring Rain at all. I ended up missing a Heat Wave against a Mega Mawile, which would have put me in a much better position that game. I got crit on my Mega Swampert, and she made a... I don't know whether I would call it a good play, and that's not because I'm salty about it. It's just sort of like up to your interpretation of whether it's a good play or a weird play. And if you want, you can go back and rewatch my Week 3 game. She stayed in with Terrakion against Mega Swampert. After taunting me while I was going to set up rocks, she then attacks me, and I'm predicting the Celebi to switch in, which felt really strange because she didn't have a good way to kill Torn outside of the Terrakion. So it felt really weird that she just did that. And it ended up costing me the game, basically, because I could have had Mega Swampert alive and the Terrakion dead, and then got Rocks Up later, which would have helped immensely against the Volcarona, but it didn't end up happening, so all's well that ends well, I guess. Amoonguss put in quite a bit of work this game. I got an HP Rock against Volcarona off in Trick Room, which was super helpful, and then Banded Scissor could have done some stuff, but the fact that Volcarona was just sitting there really ended up kind of putting Scissor in a bad spot, essentially. That's pretty much what it came down to. I seem to remember Specs Heliolisk actually doing quite a bit of damage, though, in that game. The week 4, we went back to winning, and we beat Scrappy. I hit a Focus Blast, and he missed a Fire Blast. That's pretty much all this game came down to, was Turtonator versus Heliolisk in the end game, and then Monferno ended up cleaning, which was pretty clutch, honestly. Life Orb Hydra was reasonably effective. I seem to remember he actually like knocked off my choice band on Conk, and Conk was really really good in this matchup. So I liked bringing Conk here. Alakazam is kind of weird. I brought again another defensive Necrozma. It was very defensive Necrozma and like defensive Torn, and then I went a little bit more offensive with the rest of the team, and it ended up paying off pretty handily. I liked that game. That was a good one. Week 5, we took on JJ, and I definitely choked the shit out of this game. This probably should have been a win right away. I brought Workup Dark Z Hydra, which just like blew past his Deoxys, nuked his Emboar, and then was about to beat the Kangaskhan, but I had minus special attack. So I should have just swapped into the Necrozma instead of giving him free power-up punches, but I was not playing that game smart. If I had kept Hydra, it was the only thing that would outspeed Kyurem, and I thought it was going to be Scarf Kyurem, but it ended up not being Scarf Kyurem, so I definitely should have, like, he didn't bring a Scarf at all, so keeping Hydra around would have probably just won me the game, because Kyurem ended up just, like, cleaning me later, because I brought a very weak, like, I had a very weak to Kyurem endgame with Swampert, Pelipper, and Torn, and while the idea of physical Torn looked kind of fun on paper here, because it kind of beat a lot of stuff, and it could effectively check something like Calm Mind Deoxys better than like Hurricane. It just didn't end up working out for me pretty much at all. Once again, another defensive Necrozma locked into a defensive role, although it was better against the Mega Kangaskhan, to say the least. Week 6, we took on Leo, and I hacked him a little bit, but he also made some interesting plays that game. He ended up bringing a lot of stuff that I wasn't anticipating, including the Blastoise, and it was a very bulky team to take down. I didn't have the best answers to it. Once again, I had a defensive Necrozma that missed a Toxic against Megalakazam, by the way. I played very poorly around his Megalakazam, but I played very well around his Zeraora with my Gardevoir. Heliolisk, I think could have done more work. Klefki ended up just being such a big problem that I wasn't necessarily set up to deal with that. I brought something to do with screens, though. And then I think Scarf Hydra just won the game after AV Torn could tank some hits. So it ended up working out. I wasn't super confident in this build, and it ended up translating into playoffs. Week 7, we took on Pure and the Purdue Molebreakers. So this was after he took over the team for Clyde, and then the transactions were allowed, which really screwed me over, I think, in the grand scheme of things, because he ended up picking up Cofagrius, which was really, really good against my Mega Swampert. And then for some reason, Rotom came, which I think was just a Torn check, but a lot of stuff that I was expecting didn't come. So, like, I really overprepped for both of his steel types in this game, and neither of them came because of the transactions. Snorlax, which I overprepped for as well, didn't come. And then, like, Lando I, which I felt like was ridiculous that it didn't come, but I guess against Rain it doesn't need to. I seem to remember making some good plays around Megalodios. I could have won this game had I clicked Ice Punch and not Sludge Wave. I ended up choking really badly, and I clicked Sludge Wave against the Bulu, not thinking that he would switch into Rotom, and I canceled my mind. Like, I changed my mind, canceled the move, and then clicked Sludge Wave, and then he switched into Rotom. And if I just clicked Ice Punch, I would have killed the Rotom, I would have had another turn of Rain, and I could have Sludge Waved the Bulu guaranteed and won the game. But I choked it, and so we lost 1-0. He threw some differential to me. He threw away his Rotom. Instead of just switching into Bulu or something, or like killing me with Bulu, he switched into Rotom. Specs Pelipper pretty much did nothing. Raikou is a giant problem, but especially defensive Hydra actually put in quite a lot of work here. It was designed to take on the Latios, which it didn't need to for some reason. I don't remember why it didn't need to. I can't remember exactly what happened. And then for once I brought, well, semi-defensive, but a more offensive stored power Necrozma, which actually put in quite a bit of work. I think it got like 3 kills. Oh, Necrozma killed the Latios, that's why. It got like 3 kills and eliminated the Cofagrigus, which was wearing down my Pert. And T-Spikes were a big problem in that game. It just ended up being like a really big issue because I didn't bring any removal except for Specs Pelly, which I never had a chance to click Defog with Pelipper. So definitely a big mistake on my part in that game. I think I threw away my Heliolisk for no reason. My Heliolisk was really good in that game, and I threw it away thinking the Raikou was like Modest Scarf, and then the Bulu ended up being Scarf, and it really caught me off guard. So I probably should have scouted for that. That was definitely big mistakes on my part there. Week 8, we picked up a win against Scotty in the London Luxray, who took over for Fizzle. He brought a very interesting team. I made one big play this game, and that was clicking Hyper Voice against Mega Pidgeot when it was subbing, and I just killed it outright, and that wasn't even an issue anymore. Mimikyu did something. I confused Mimikyu or something in that game. Scissor could have cleaned up, but I don't remember why it didn't. Oh well, doesn't really matter. It ended up breaking the Weezing still, which was useful, and it broke the Umbreon. And that's pretty much what I needed it to do. It was a very standard team, very specially defensive Necrozma, Specs Gardevoir. It was a pretty standard team. I just threw 3 choice items on and a Life Orb, and then leftovers and a Rocky Helmet. So it was a very basic team that game. And it sort of just came down to how balanced my team was. Week 9 we ended up losing to Stybe, who tossed a bunch of differential away against me. But this was an interesting game. Monferno was weird. I was sort of anticipating a playoffs rematch against Stybe in round 1, so I didn't want to bring my best team anyways, but Amoonguss, he had some really good tech with Psycho Shift Latios, which was interesting, because Amoonguss looked really bad against his team on paper. Pretty much the only reason I brought it was as a Lopunny pivot, and then the rest of the team it was completely useless against. Rotom, Latios, Skarm, Ninetales, Togekiss, Cresselia. 6 of his... Oh, he only drafted 10 Mons. So, 6 of his 10 Mons just outright beat Amoonguss. And, yeah, so that was really good tech. It was kind of weird because it was Sleep Talk, Psycho Shift, right? So it was 2 moves wasted on a Latios for the Amoonguss that probably shouldn't have even come in the first place. Huge mistake on my part. Really good tech on his part. Just pretty sus that it even came in the first place. Not really much more to say about this one. SD, Necrozma, so yet another game where offensive Necrozma put in the work that I needed to. Scissor could have done a lot more if Skarmory just didn't exist. But Skarmory, I threw away my Heliolisk on a turn. That was probably the turning point in this game, actually, was throwing away Heliolisk, because I definitely could have won if I could kill the Skarmory, but I could never kill the Skarmory. So I just ended up sucking that I didn't just go Hydra on the Crook. Instead, my sleeping Hydra, which could have just given up the Scarf and it really wouldn't have mattered, probably would have been more beneficial than giving up my Helios for no reason, when I could have killed the Crook the following turn. So big mistakes on my part. Yet another game that was winnable by all means. Week 10 we played Sean and the Ailsa Craig Cutieflies. Yeah, this was bad. I got smoked by Speed Pass and a Dodrio, and the only reason I came out of this with anything at all and going into playoffs is because Speed Pass was not allowed. So I overprepped heavily for mons like Azumarill, Breloom, and Zygarde, none of which came. I still kind of underprepped for Kartana in the grand scheme of things, and I definitely underprepped for Dodrio. I really did not think that Dodrio was going to come. Dodrio plus Crobat, I thought only one of the flying types would come. I did not think that both were going to come against me. And that was a huge flaw. I had no flying resist on my entire team. It was Helios was my flying resist, right? And I could have just been a more defensive Helios variant, but I didn't end up being that way. So that was a really shitty game, and I felt very bad after that one, but coming out with a win was very important. Then we played a play-in game against Ishan, and we kind of smacked him. He made a good play that forced me into a bad decision with his Ditto against my Heliolisk spamming Glare, which was just stupid on my part. I could have just been clicking Hyper Voice, and if I had Hyper Voice, then I would have two-shot the Ditto, and the game would not have even been a problem. Because we got rid of the Delmise really early on. I put the Jirachi to sleep really early on. The Mega Gallade didn't even come. He tossed away his Nidoking for no reason when he was in with Suicune, and I just clicked Earthquake with Mega Swampert. The Clefable didn't even come. There was a lot of good stuff that just didn't show up this game, and I think Ditto was one of the big reasons for that. I made some really good reads with Mega Swampert in terms of hitting. I caught the Noivern on an Ice Punch and just knocked it out, and then again he threw away his Nidoking. So Mega Swampert once again put in a lot of work, and I brought a very standard rain-based team this week just to sort of make sure that I had things going for me, because something like Specs Torn just tore a hole through his team. His flying resist was Jirachi. and Rotom. And Rotom didn't even come, and Jirachi would have dropped to Heat Wave. So that was a big game for me. Big game. Got me into playoffs. I did have a team built for DS in quarters, and I filmed the team builder for it, but I never posted that because obviously it didn't happen. But I didn't change much. I ended up swapping Scizor to a Lumberry set, moved the Z move off of Hydra and moved it to a Scarf set. I brought the exact same Pelipper set, but I moved it into physical defense. Literally identical Torn set, identical Necrozma set, but no leftovers, and I went with Super Berry instead. So I made some small adjustments, but I brought the exact same team essentially against DS for quarters, and then we never ended up playing that game because he forfeited to me. Semis, we took on JJ, and I went with a very offensive approach to this game. So I still brought the same like physically defensive Necrozma with no Rocky Helmet this time because I didn't find that the chip was necessary against the Kang. It was just being able to tank the hits. And I went with Banded Scissor, a Guavberry Conch, which was so clutch. Popping this berry was like the most clutch thing in this entire game. Conch just put in so much work. I crit his Slurp Buff. I wasn't even expecting Slurp Buff, but I crit it and killed it with a Thunder Punch, which didn't matter because Thunder Punch and a Mach Punch would have killed it from that range. Very effective game, honestly. Like, all things considered, I brought dual Scarfers that could have handled something like Scarf Karen Black. I could have handled like Bisharp and Scarf Embor as well, which I ended up having to do. I handled Scarf Embor, got up rocks, and just like won the game essentially from there. Deoxys defense not coming. Like, this was just a very well played, well handled game on my part, I think. Torn like outsped Scarf Embor or something, I think. Yeah, Adamant Scarf Embor, and he didn't have to be Jolly. So that was a good game. I think I played very, very well that game, and my team just matched up a lot better once I had thought through the matchup more. And definitely not seeing Deoxys was big, but Scizor was going to be able to deal with Deoxys in theory. And then for finals, we took on Leo and the Mexico City Wallbreakers. Once again, I brought the identical Heliolisk set that I brought the first time. I brought the identical Swampert set. I brought the identical Hydra set. I brought the identical Torn set, and then I switched out something like Gardevoir, I think, for an Expert Belt offensive Necrozma, which could have done work, but I had to sack it for no reason. And then I swapped out something else for Akaberry Scissor. Swapped out Pelly, maybe? I don't remember. I don't recall. Excuse me. Oh, I had Necrozma the first time, so it was only Helios that I swapped out, but I made Necrozma a different set. There we go. Yeah. Leo built a team for Ishan and just like wiped the floor with me. Lycanroc Dusk was way too big of an issue, and I didn't have the proper defensive responses to that. I probably should have been defensive Necrozma and not offensive Necrozma. And Necro just dropped to Z Plasma Fist from Zero Aura anyways, which isn't good against me, which is why it's interesting. Because he didn't bring something like Grass Knot Zera or like a more predictable Zera, it ended up like really screwing me over, and I got just bodied by Leo. It was not fun at all. So that was pretty much the story of my season. Pretty inconsistent for the most part. I made a lot of mistakes in the regular season. I probably would have won quarters because I had a very good matchup against DS, and then I bodied JJ, and then I got absolutely smacked by Leo. So we're still in the D League, to my knowledge. I've not decided if I'm returning or not, and that's more of a discussion I'll get into now, I guess. So there's a lot of leagues that I play in, and a lot of them I take on as commitments to friends or for competition. Now, UPA was one of the leagues I took on for competition. Something like Hive as well is something you could say that I took on for competition. And then there's leagues that I take on to support my friends and play in leagues that my friends run. So something like PSS, where I play because I wanted to help out Hamu, fill a slot for him, and I wanted to try the new meta that he was trying out as well, which was no Earthquake. Or something like Nepal that I play in because I like Nacho a lot and I want to fill in a slot. Versus something like GSA, which is run by my friends but is very high competition. So there's sort of a middle ground there. And I'm definitely not going to be able to take on all of those leagues because I know that they're all going to start before March. Like, every single one of them is going to have a season start before March. And I'm not going to be able to commit to 18 leagues or whatever, right? Like, that's just not feasible. So I'm going to try and limit myself to 5 at maximum. And if I'm really not enjoying myself with Draft League, then I'm not going to be able to commit to that either. I think 3 is going to be a much more comfortable level of leagues. I'm currently sitting at 3 right now, and it's a lot more comfortable and laid back in terms of how my week is balanced and what I need to do. And that leaves me open to doing more in terms of NCL and things like that as well. So again, yet to decide on UPA, but it sort of depends on when the season starts and how many commitments I have going on at the same time. I discussed that in the WWC video as well, about my return to take the title, or to defend my title in WWC. Obviously, I didn't win the title here. It was quite a disappointing finals match. Not as disappointing as Hive, where I definitely could have won Hive finals, and I'm still mentally reeling at the fact that I just did not play to the best of my ability, and I absolutely could have won that game. But let's talk about the roster and sort of how it affected my stats. So, all-time performance. So the new, where the next highest now is High Dragon, all the way over here at 24 kills. Slightly better than Keldeo in terms of deaths and whatnot. I've drafted Keldeo and Hydra about the same amount of times. Hydra is really consistent dragon. I value it very highly, and it causes a lot of fairy coverage to be needed, or fighting coverage to be needed. So you can kind of balance that out with a really good fairy and a really good steal, and they cover Hydra exceptionally well, like exceptionally well. So that's something I would want to pair better next time. Scissor and Gardevoir just created a very offensive core, and probably building around Hydra a little bit better, like I had done maybe in like NCL Season 1 with Celesteela and Rabombi, I guess was my fairy then, so maybe not so much, but that ended up working out quite well. Conk, I'm getting a lot more and more comfortable with. I like using Conk, big ups on that. Torn, I dislike the reliance on it, and I ended up bringing it to 12 games this season. I'm not the biggest fan of Torn. I don't know what it is about it, but it just doesn't feel consistent ever. Like, it feels like it's trying to do too much, even when you're only forcing it into one role. So I just don't like it. It's a good pivot. It's not my style really. Mega Swampert, I will probably never ever draft again. It was actually incredibly useful this season. It did get all 12 of these kills this season, and it's going to kill a game for me. But it's not my thing. Like, I can't do that. I think I would rather have taken Mega Scissor. I really like regular Scissor more than Mega Scissor because of the fact that you can run items on it. But I think I would have rather taken Mega Scissor with Pelipper and then taken another Rain Sweeper, something else like Kingdra or Ludicolo or something, instead of Mega Swampert. But I just wanted to have that tiny rain option that was a bigger threat. And I did have a lot of special threats, but I also had a lot of physical threats too, and it was just sort of a lack of bulk that Mega Scissor would have provided more so than Mega Swampert. Although, don't get me wrong, having the ground type was essential to the team because I did not have a ground type anywhere else. Regular Scissor performed about where I expected it to. It's a really good pivot, and I like what it does. Necrozma, I grew to be a much bigger fan of than I had been in the past. I've sort of underrated Necrozma, and I really hate playing against Necrozma, but it ended up being very effective this season, and I appreciate all that Necrozma offered to the team. Amoonguss is something that I'm reasonably comfortable with. I've drafted it 3 times. Surprisingly, only brought it to 13 games over those 3 seasons, so bringing it to like less than 4 games a season, or a little bit more than 4 games a season, is pretty whack. It can be a very good defensive Pokemon. Its problem is that it's got really good HP, middling bulk, and it's really just a good pivot into things. Like, that's pretty much how I've found that Amoonguss plays best, is just by pivoting in. You don't really need to run Spore all the time, because someone's generally going to have a Spore check, but besides that, that was fine. Pelipper's a trash mon. On the same level as trash as Mega Absol is, really. Hated it. Absolutely hated it. Heliolisk, I just clearly have not used well in the seasons that I've had it. I felt like I used it better offensively this season, but it was still lacking a little bit. Regular Gardevoir could have been a little bit better. I didn't use it to the best of my ability for sure. Monferno was definitely a diamond in the rough. I was not expecting to find that much value out of a 1-point Pokemon, and I think that was the entire team. So Monferno being the last one, definitely would draft that one again, and that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Again, I don't know if I'm returning to UP or not, but keep cheering me on. The guys in UP are pretty nice, and I enjoy the community, so definitely sticking around on the server by all means. But we will see if I return to play or not based on my schedule and what's going on. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this season of the UPA-D League. I definitely learned a lot, and I think that the idea of it being a D League or